Hello everybody and welcome back to Safari Mack Explores North America. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are still in Alaska, but just as a reminder from last week's sea otter episode, we're beginning to wrap up our time here, so just don't forget to place your vote on where you want to go, and I'll remind you, we can go back to Asia, or we can go down to Australia, the land down under. All it takes is your vote. You have until the 7th of February, that's Friday, February 7th, to place your vote, and then I'll announce the winner in part 2 of next week's episode. So, with that said, I hope we all had some fun and had a fun time with the sea otters. Cute, but of course, as I said, sometimes devilish. But today we are moving on to meet one of a famous flyer of Alaska, not eagles, as we already did them during the previous year, but puffins, otherwise known by their Latin name of Fredericula. Now, you'll notice that I didn't say the second part, and I'll explain to you why that is a little later. For starters, though, if you're ready to get started, we'll take flight and go fishing with these birds. But first, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Check out my Facebook page for content on conservation. And if you have questions about animals, or if there's an animal that you want me to do in the future, all you gotta do is just send me an email, which you will always find the link to down in my description below. But if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started. As always, we'll begin with their family and their evolution. Now, the puffin is a pretty interesting kind of bird. It is a kind of seabird, but it's a member of the aukhlid or auk family, or otherwise known as Alcidae. Now, we've already met one of these guys before. Sadly, though, this was an extinct species. Remember the great auk? If you don't, then be sure to check out my other video called Safari Mack's Extinct Files, the Great Auk, which I took some footage and talked to you all about the little bit of the history about this bird back during my time at Chicago's Field Museum. I do recommend that you go check it out, and if you want to take a look, just follow the link that I've left for you down in my description below next to my email. So, with this bird, the auk is also, in addition to the flightless great auk, as well as puffins, these include guillemots and auklets. So they were thought to have originated back in the Pacific Ocean, roughly around 10 to 12 million years ago, with molecular evidence showing that there was a lot of at one point there must have been many different species of puffins flying over somewhat of the northern oceans of the Pacific and the Atlantic. But today we recognize 3 species. One, the horned puffin, otherwise known as Fredericula corniculata, the Atlantic puffin, which we will not be focusing on today, as it's not only found on the eastern part of the United States as well as northern Europe, and also the tufted puffin, known as Fredericula curahata. So today, for our purposes, the horned and the tufted, those two are going to be our main focused birds. So, sorry to the Atlantic puffin. And for today's episode, we are here in the Aleutian Islands of southern Alaska, just south of the Bering Sea. So now we'll continue on with their habitat and their lifestyle, as well as their nesting habits. So, usually they will hang out on steep rock colonies, similar to like here on the Aleutian Islands, where there's grassy turf, as well as stopes and crevices, anywhere where it would be perfect to either burrow underground, or they could just lay their egg on a rock ledge. I know it's a little precarious, but these guys have been doing it for millions of years. They seem to know what they're doing easily. But most of the time, they're out there on the open sea. They're out in the open ocean. They're not hanging out always on land. So they will forage for food on the water, as well as they'll even sleep on the water, even take a rest. But most of the time, these guys are flying over the open ocean until it's time for them to head back to shore and begin family life. So usually during the nesting season, they would prefer to stay close to their range so it's easier to travel, but they have been known to fly 60 miles out just to find food, not just for themselves, but also for their growing chick. So, after courtship ritual, and of course reuniting with their other significant other, which these birds do mate for life, they will lay usually a single egg in a burrow or a crevice, and it'll be 45 days until this egg hatches. So mom and dad take turns while one goes out to the open ocean to feed, the other will watch over the egg. Then, after 40 days or 55 days later, the fledgling, that's what we call baby birds, they begin to start to strike out on their own. And this is kind of how the tufted puffin usually looks when they're first kind of flying out. So you can see they don't have that kind of cool looking eyebrow-like hair, so to speak. Now we'll continue on with their diet and hunting style. So typically, they are big fish eaters. And thanks to that huge beak, they can carry a great big bunch full of fish. So, but it's not just fish that they're eating. They're also eating squids, smaller microorganisms like plankton. They'll even eat tiny krill when they get the chance. Usually these birds can dive as deep as 360 feet while in this case they're flying underwater just to find food. So they're excellent swimmers, and they can bring up at least 20 fish at a time. But now here's the thing. When they're going out to feed, first they have to feed themselves. And they're not feeding themselves when they're above the water. This is all for the baby. When they're underwater, that's when they're eating. So they try to fill themselves up, and then they bring back whatever they can for the growing chick. And as you know with birds, because they have a high metabolism, they need a lot of food and a lot of water because they do grow quickly. And I mean quickly. Finally, let's end today's episode with a reminder, but as also the influence in human culture. Now, in Alaska, these birds have been revered by many different shamans groups as it's been known that their beak plates are often used for rituals for what I do not know. But also, did you know that they're used in addition to food, they're also used for clothing? The Inuits actually will make parkas out of puffin skins because it's tough, and their feathers are worn as a kind of lining in their clothing. So, pretty interesting. Even I didn't realize that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all the time I have for this episode. So just a reminder, you have until next Friday, or before part 2 comes up, to either say you want to go to Australia or if you want to go back to Asia. Remember, one more week, and then with next week's part 2 episode, I will announce to you the winner. And so until next week, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you all out there.